everybody, it's Annie with another session of our Leadership is Calling podcast. And today we are doing a special conversation between Heather McGonigal, our executive coach extraordinaire, and myself. And we are going to be talking about leadership today, meaning that we are noticing, well, we're having the experience with all of our clients that there's a lot of stress out there. There are a lot of businesses that are suffering and having a hard time right now. And that means that inside the company, between team members and leaders, it's challenging. It's super challenging. And so I thought Heather and I should talk a little bit about some of the skills that are super important during a time like this, including how to kind of get out of your own narrow perspective tunnel and get a broader perspective with some outside support. Talking about intention, how to be super intentional, and what it really takes to be intentional. So with that,
Yeah, Annie. So I have been, in working with our clients. One thing that comes up a lot in this current business environment is, a lot of stress during meetings and big decisions and fast moving messages that happen in the technology they use in teamwork, right? And sometimes people are communicating really big things in this fast moving messaging. And that's one of the places I see where people have to extra practice the power of the pause and not immediately respond, and get to that place where they can expand their thinking of like, why might this message be coming to me, or what else might be going on here, or all these other things. I'll give you an example. I've had people that I coach in our leadership program. I coach two different people on the same team.
Okay.
And so I had an experience once where they were both telling me separately their point of view of this big misunderstanding and this disrespectful Slack communication of a important thing. Anyway, I asked, did this happen on a video call where you could see each other, or like in what mode did this misunderstanding happen? And it turned out it was in Slack. And so then both of them separately allowed me to read their conversation because I wasn't involved, right? I could see all these other possibilities in what was communicated, and I could see the way people brought their own interpretation, stress, pressure, judgment, story, and we're all offended, right? Both for different reasons. And to both of them, I suggested like these alternative vantage points. Like, well, what if this person is just fill in the blank, and they hadn't, like, that didn't even occur to them, right? Because the emotional reaction interpretation, when it happens, that's the only possible interpretation.
Yes, that's right.
And it takes that pause and the ability to be in a neutral place, or get yourself in a neutral place, or ask somebody else to look at it for you.
Absolutely.
To actually consider other ways that, oh, what else might be going on here that isn't, disrespectful to me or personal, what's actually anchored in like the business, what may be going on in their role, all of that.
Absolutely. I was just sharing earlier that I had a kind of a similar or another example of a situation where a client, I had some exchanges with a client, and I got pretty triggered. And Barbara was, as the neutral party, she wasn't in this exchange. So Barbara, as the neutral party, she could really look at it and slow it down and kind of parse it out so that I wasn't only seeing my emotional interpretation. And I think that's huge. It's this is kind of an essential part of being human at work in a fast-moving, high-stress environment. It's like having neutral team members, mentors, coaches, people to support you that are not, that know you, that are familiar with your world, but not in it, to help you kind of, I think they call it co-regulate, right? To help
Mm.
you get a perspective that is not your emotional interpretation.
As you were saying that, I was just thinking about how the human default is the self protection, right? And
Yeah.
I think in relationships, work or otherwise, the human default when we're upset, usually, or like I think it happens more commonly, that we seek agreement for our upset. And if someone's my friend, they're going to confirm the
Yes.
you have every right to be upset. Oh my gosh, if I got a message like that or something like that, right? Like that's usually how we, go about things. But, we teach the process, the core process, which helps you do something
Yes.
other than that default. And it does take that muscle of emotional endurance and self leadership for anybody to be able to hold space differently than that. And
Yes.
definitely in business, we need to be able to hold space differently than that, because
Yes.
if we bring all of our personal stories into it, we're really going to take things way off track.
Absolutely. Yeah. We won't get anything done. Not anything good, anyways. Like, I was also sharing earlier that, you know, humans are, we have faulty wiring now for the world that we live in today.
Yeah.
Our emotions are meant to protect us, but they're easily triggered. They're easily spooked. They're for situations that we actually need them to be, we need to be calm in, right? We can't see everything as a threat and actually work together.
Hmm.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Once we get triggered, once there's even the teeniest perceived little threat in there, we no longer have good teamwork. And it's and we can't function, especially in business. We can't function like that today.
Yeah.
And we certainly, even in the world, we can't address our biggest, most complex problems, right? Things like climate change
Yeah.
and poverty and whatnot. It's like the emotions are the emotional interpretations. Thinking from an emotional reactive place is the worst.
And honestly, the way I think about that is that actually, in the outside environment, in our external environment, people play on this way that knowing how our emotional system works, right? And so a lot of us are in self-protective mode for good reason. Like we're just barely trying to
Yeah.
pay the bills. We have other stressors going
Yes.
on, right? And then people play on that emotion to make us kind of think this team versus that team, this person versus that person.
Yes.
And that keeps the real conversations and real decisions from being able to happen.
It
And
does.
you're right, we see it in our larger world, like with the big things highly impacting all of us that we can't seem to move the needle on.
Yeah.
Now imagine that inside of an entrepreneurial company, and the same thing happens if we don't
Yes.
learn to practice and build that muscle of,
Yes.
what are the neutral facts here? What are our different options? And Annie, I love how you talk about like in the complexity. Sometimes in business, we have to choose the best of the bummer alternatives, right?
Yes.
That takes a super high level of self leadership and a team able to be in self leadership, because everything about that says this is a complex situation. There's
Yes.
no clear ding, ding, ding. This is the
Exactly.
winning answer
Yes.
with no negatives, right? Like that literally
Exactly.
doesn't exist. And so then, but we have to be able to endure and hold neutrally and have those kinds of conversations and try to find the best of the bummer alternatives quite
Exactly.
a bit. Like it's a superpower. If we
Yeah.
had the stronger ability to do that more and more, we could move the needle. on bigger things.
Absolutely. One of the things about getting really good at that actually is, being a good decision maker, knowing that none of the options have zero downside.
Yeah.
Like they all have negatives and positives. We're just going for the ones that are kind of most positive and most aligned with where we ultimately want to go, what we want to achieve. But when we're doing that, we can tend to feel like none of this should be happening. Like this whole situation, I should not have to be making this choice. Like we should have done this differently a year ago, so I would not be here right now. And it's like, guess what? You don't get to go back in time. And so now really it is about making the best decision we can now for the future. And I think one of the big payoffs actually is that by going through these times, we actually do get to a time, maybe it's not right away, maybe it's going to take a little bit to get there, but we get to a time where the decisions are more optimistic, where we're like, oh, wait a minute, we went through really hard work, but now this is actually going quite well. And in those times, not only do we get to enjoy them, but we get to have way more gratitude of like, we have the comparison of like, oh, we should enjoy this because this is not all the time, right? It's like enjoying a really gorgeous spring day with perfect weather. It's like, oh gosh, be in it, enjoy it. And, knowing that you don't get to choose the weather.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to make decisions when it's stormy and rainy and yeah, and none of the decisions look great. But that's, you are going to get sunny weather. You just don't know when.
I love too that that gave me the feeling of another aspect to why to practice the power of the pause to acknowledge the wins, the pause to, collectively and also individually in our role, right? Like sometimes we're up leveling our systems process and organization, and it's tedious and even just like in your individual role doing that. But when you're in the future and then, oh, it's actually working and it's helping everything go smoother, I think we really want to emphasize the power of the pause to entrepreneurial leaders for that self-care moment, which you and I talked about the importance of self-care prior. And like in that power of the pause, really actually taking a moment to feel the win, celebrate the win, smile at each other as a team, give like a high five virtually or in person, right? Because the pace keeps going, right? And I feel like if we're not intentional about it,
yes,
we miss those moments. And that's
totally. And that is that actually is, it's like the fuel we need, right? Yeah. It's kind of like, and even when we are going through harder times, to recognize each other for, oh my gosh, okay, that was really hard, but we did good in a really difficult situation. Sometimes business gets really hard, and right now there are some businesses that are suffering, and from a major downturns, from a major downturn, and from inflation, and oh gosh, it's just hard. But it's a win to survive that time. Like, don't forget that. Like, that's a thing of like, we made it through, and to appreciate each other for that is the fuel that we need to keep going. Yeah, to recognize that just being okay, making it through is a huge win.
And I've been finding in coaching, really this week, I feel like the theme of the week or the word of the week, Coach Heather's word of the week was intentional. Be intentional.
Yes.
Right? Because I know we use the tool of agreements and we make consciously made agreements, but even for this power of the pause and how do I want to show up here? How am I going to paint the picture of this idea that I would like our team to choose as the path? Like all of it if we could have that heightened level of being aware of being intentional.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what that pause is for. So we have a second or 10 to recognize, to remember what our intention was.
Yes.
Right, because if we get triggered, our intention flies out the window. There's no intention happening. It's all self-protection. It may look like it may look like somebody's being intentional, but they are not.
Right.
They are reacting from instinct, from a hard wiring that is, not helpful today. So yes, to be intentional, we need that pause so we can actually connect with the intention.
Yeah, it's like we need the pause and then like double pause some more.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
If you're the human, like inside of yourself, you can think, no, I'm being intentional. I'm doing what I want to do. And I'm going to speak my truth right now about how I feel about this. And actually it's like, wait, nope, your survival mode was still on.
Exactly.
You didn't get to shift out of that gear because you didn't pause enough.
That's right. Yeah, our hard wiring is strong. Yeah, I think even in my own mind, there's sometimes I do feel like that old cartoon of an angel and a devil on your shoulders.
Yeah.
When the angel's like, don't say it, don't do it, don't. And the devil's like, say it. And yeah, we need a bit of a pause to just know, like, wait. I am human. I do have feelings. This is hard right now. But what do I really want to do here? Right? How do I really want to play it? Like, what's going to be best for me in the long term? And yeah, that's, once we can really get a hold of that, it's just game changing for leaders and for our lives.
Yeah, we really need I found this really great quote that you said back in 2018 that I don't have right in front of me, but I was like, oh, this is so perfect for right now. But I'll basically summarize the gist of it, which is like, these days, today, we need more leaders. Leadership is the way of the future. It is the path to a healthier future. And that leadership part is in each of us.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about like choosing intentionally, like, what am I really going for? Or, like, what is this, when we're weighing those alternatives and we're trying to figure out the solutions and stuff, we're anchoring back to, well, what's going to make the biggest difference with the least amount of impact, and all of this like sorting of our next actions, our next choices. We all have parts that we play in that, no matter what our role in a company or our part in the larger society too. We have different like choice moments, but sometimes we miss them because we're moving fast in that emotional response. So
yeah.
I think today, that's why I love what we do, Annie, because we help strengthen and build empowered leaders. And I think that is the way of the future, and we need even more of that.
For sure. Yep, for sure. Yeah. And it begins with our self-leadership, right? It's like, yeah, we don't really even get we don't even really get to contribute if we're not in self-leadership. To learn more about this episode's topic, pick up a copy of my book, The People Part, at your favorite book retailer or at anniehymanpratt.com.